Okay, welcome back to Farms and Frontlines. I am Jess, and I'm here with my co-host, Max.
Hello.
And today we probably have the most interesting man in the world with us. So joining us is Dr. Michael Cangemi. He is a fellow Latin American history professor that I was at West Point. He's a current professor at Albany State University in Georgia, and he's author of the book Blessed Are the Activists. Dr. Cangemi's work explores activism, moral responsibility, faith, the human stories that kind of emerge when people choose to challenge the system, power that's there instead of just remaining silent. His writing examines not only historical events, but also the deeper ethical questions underneath them, like how are individuals navigating this justice system, this injustice that they're seeing? How are these movements forming, which is just in Latin America, it's just a wild thing in and of itself. And then what activism costs the people who commit themselves to it. And today we're going to talk about Guatemala, activism, historical memory, and why these stories still matter today. So, Dr. Kangemi, thank you so much for joining us. We're so excited to have you here.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
That's right. No. So, before we begin, if it's all right, I'd like to quickly set the stage for Guatemala. Our last episode kind of went into it, but I'll just do a real quick overview. So, in the 50s, Guatemala became one of these defining battlegrounds of the Cold War in Latin America. In 1954, the democratically elected government of President Jacobo Arbenz was overthrown in a CIA-backed coup after his land reform policies threatened the interests of powerful elites and the United Fruit Company. And we love talking about the United Fruit Company. The coup was framed as part of the global fight against communism, but its consequences inside Guatemala were profound. What followed was political instability, military dominance, and growing repression. For many Guatemalans, especially indigenous communities and the rural poor, hopes of reform gave way to fear, inequality, and violence. By the 1960s, Guatemala had entered the early years of what would become a devastating civil conflict. And Dr. Ken is going to take us into a period post-coup, pre-genocide, but he's going to look at this country that is deeply divided in political and economic power structures and emerging movements that are calling for justice, labor rights, land reform, and human dignity. And what we see coming out of that is universities, churches, student groups, labor organizations are increasingly becoming spaces of resistance, but also targets of surveillance and repression. So we have a great story today. I'm super excited. So Dr. Jimmy, why don't you take us to San Lucas?
All right. Well, first of all, you built up some kind of expectation with an introduction like that. So,
Everybody listen up.
so no pressure whatsoever. Um, all right. So,
None at all.
Entertain me now. No.
San Lucas Tolimán is an absolutely beautiful town on the shores of Lake Atitlan in the Guatemalan highlands. It sits about 1 mile above sea level in elevation and is essentially on the side and is ringed by active volcanoes. This makes the soil around San Lucas Toliman especially fertile and great for growing coffee, which is going to be important to our story as we move through this
Okay.
today. That is ringed by volcanoes, which gives it pretty fertile ground for growing coffee. It sits about 1 mile in elevation and gets about 80 inches of rain every year. Uh,
Dang.
Historically speaking, it's a colonial town, as but for our purposes, it also did not have a priest for some decades prior to the 1960s. Guatemala off and on had a very tenuous sort of push and pull relationship with the Catholic Church. And on three different occasions in the country's history, the Guatemalan government actually expelled all Jesuit priests from the country
Oh.
for under suspicions of being sort of a social or political threat to the established order.
Mm.
Oh, okay.
And what that leaves us with is by the 1940s, right when Jorge Ubico is overthrown as Guatemalan dictator, there are just 44 Catholic priests in the entire country.
Hmm.
And to give you an example of just what that looks like in practice, the Diocese of Huehuetenango in the western parts of the country, where some of the more pronounced violence would later occur during the war. During the 1940s, that diocese had just two priests for 144,000 people.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
Gee.
Busy,
Yeah.
busy priest.
Yeah.
Right. And when you and consider that this is an overwhelmingly Catholic country at the time, and so there are a lot of things that priests do in terms of social and cultural uh, existence that without a priest becomes very difficult. Baptisms, weddings, funerals, these types
Hmm.
of
Oh,
things,
right.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's in this context that the San Lucas mission comes about. So in 1962, during the Second Vatican Council, the bishop of the Sololá Diocese in Guatemala, which is where San Lucas is located, Bishop Angelico Miloto, met Bishop Alphonse Shadweiler of New Ulm, Minnesota, and that's the diocese that sponsors this mission. And in their conversations in Rome during the Vatican Council, Bishop Miloto talked about the need for a priest in the diocese and the need for a mission, because at that particular point, they had been without a resident priest for about 50 years.
Dang. Okay. Wow.
And so this is sort of the genesis of what would become the San Lucas mission. And so by 1962, that mission had gotten off the ground with a New Ulm, Minnesota diocese priest named Father Stan Martinka leading the mission. In 1964, Father Martinka got some assistance from a newly arrived priest named Father Greg Schaefer.
Okay.
3 weeks after Father Greg arrived at the mission, Father Martinka was called to active duty as a chaplain in the Minnesota Air National Guard
Oh.
and never came back to the mission. After his active duty with the Air National Guard, he served as a chaplain for the Air Force, both in Vietnam and then in Germany.
Oh, wow.
And that left Father Greg to essentially run the mission on his own. And he did so for the next 48 years.
Wow. Geez.
Yeah, in fact, he's buried there.
Oh,
Oh,
wow.
dang. That's awesome.
Looking at these primary documents, the notes
Hmm.
from Father Greg, he said it was the nicest experience he'd ever had in a stranger's basement in Minnesota.
Yeah, so what happened was, funny story. Originally, this whole thing was going to be focused on the Jesuits.
Mhm.
And when I made initial inquiries to the Jesuit Society about doing research, I was met with a very firm no and
Okay.
a very clear dead end, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, I was in grad school at the time. I didn't really know what to do. And so I was actually at the point where I actually just Googled Catholic missions in Guatemala. Let's see what we can find,
Hmm.
right? So this San Lucas mission is the first one that came up on the search results. So I saw they had, based out of Minnesota. Like, all right, I call them, see if they have any old bulletins or newsletters or something.
Hmm.
And the woman that I talked to said that I needed to talk to the mission director who was out of the office and she'd pass along my phone number.
Hmm.
Well, about a month went by, didn't hear anything, and decided, well, let me call back just to kind of button this up officially. And I called back and I said, I don't know if you remember me, the whole story, recapped it. And she said, oh, actually, he just walked in. Hold on a second, I'll put him on the phone. Oh, okay. So this guy that I'd never spoken to in my life got on the phone. And I don't know if I was just a good salesman or if he was a lunatic or a little bit of both, but
A little bit of both.
um, I explained what I was up to. And again, never spoke to this guy before. He said, Oh yeah, I've got all of that stuff in filing cabinets in my basement. You want to come out and look at them? Yeah, all
Sure.
right.
Sure.
All the lessons about don't get in the van with the guy trying to give you
Yeah.
Right.
candy
Yeah.
Yeah,
out the
clearly
window.
I did not listen to Stranger Danger, right? So,
A van marked free historical documents.
right. Yeah.
Oh.
Oh.
Now, I did have to explain this to my wife. Look, I'll be gone a few days. Where are you going? Some guy's basement.
Minnesota, don't worry about
Right, yeah.
it.
But it
Well,
turned out okay.
yeah, we're glad you went.
Yeah, clearly,
Yeah.
right? And in that visit, while I was there, he said, "Are you going down to Guatemala anytime soon?" I said, "I plan to." And he said, "Well, tell you what, when you go down, let me know and I'll line up some people for you to interview."
That's awesome.
Oh, nice.
And that's how I got the interviews for the book.
That's awesome.
So when Father Greg arrived at the mission, he arrived in a place that was just racked with poverty. And to kind of give some context to that, Father Greg actually in his documents left very accurate numbers for historians like me to play with later on. So to give you a sense of what we're talking about here, San Lucas Tolimán as a town in the 1960s, San Lucas proper had about 4,000 people as its population. The general area itself had a population of about 14,000 or so.
Okay.
And this is about 1965. And of that 14,000, 80, or I'm sorry, 97% of those 14,000 were indigenous people. So
Oh,
this
wow.
is
Okay.
almost exclusively, almost uniformly an indigenous area.
Okay.
Also, within that population, 80% of indigenous people in the area worked in agriculture in some fashion or another.
Okay.
Uh,
So
Go
important
ahead.
to the area.
Yeah, oh,
I would say
absolutely,
so, yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
80% of the indigenous population in and around San Lucas worked in coffee fields.
Okay.
Um, that being said, 0.08% of that local indigenous population had ownership in those coffee fields.
Oh my gosh. So
Of
like,
course.
Less than
Yeah.
1/10 of 1%.
wow.
That's
And
yeah.
on top of that, 95% of the coffee that they cultivated was exported.
Hmm.
So very little of that wealth, as you can guess, was staying in the community.
Wow.
Now, talking about wealth, at that particular time, the average worker's wage was approximately 50 cents a day in 1965, which, believe it or not, had increased. In 1940, the average worker's wage in the area was just 15 cents a day.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so 50 cents a day in 1965 and 15 cents a day in 1940. However, during the early and late stages of the coffee season, that average wage could drop as low as 12 cents a day.
Oh my
It would go
goodness.
down?
Yes.
Jeez.
Yes.
It's the busy season. We have to pay you less.
Right.
Okay.
Um, so that means all of that to say that this is a region, as you can guess, that has extraordinarily crippling poverty.
Mm.
And we can see that poverty play out demographically in a couple of ways. For example, the average life expectancy for a resident of San Lucas Toliman in the mid 1960s, average life expectancy from birth was 46 years old.
Oh my
Oh my
gosh.
gosh.
For comparison, in the United States, at that time, the life expectancy from birth was 70.
Mm.
Okay.
Significant difference, yeah.
Yes, and one of the most eye-popping statistics to frame this is when we look at the under 5 years old mortality rate. So
No,
this
no.
Oh gosh.
the percentage of children that die before their fifth birthday. So in 1965, In the United States, that rate would have been 2.7%. So that would be 27 deaths per 1,000.
Mhm.
In Guatemala, in 1965, that rate was 18.7%, so 187 out of 1,000.
Mm.
In San Lucas Tolimán, it was 53.5%, so
Oh my gosh.
535 out of 1,000. I would also point out that for indigenous children, it was over 60%.
Oh my
It's
God.
terrible.
Yes. And the leading cause of death for children under the age of 5 was malnutrition.
Malnutrition, yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Um, Now, to put that into even more context, we can also talk about the economics of poverty. So
Hmm.
in San Lucas Toliman, in the mid 1960s, according to Father Greg's notes, they did a random survey of families in the area, and the average income at that time was approximately $15 a month.
Wow.
Now, consider that with that $15 a month, some food prices include pork or beef was approximately 40 to 50 cents per pound. Milk was approximately 5 cents for 8 ounces. Eggs were about a nickel a piece. Bread was 1 cent for a small roll.
Hmm.
Now, the economics of that are such that people on average consumed meat once every 15 days because of the cost.
Right.
And
Makes sense.
pork, beef, milk, eggs, all of these are protein producing
Mhm.
foods. And so this is where we can see why malnutrition would be so prevalent
Yeah.
uh, at this particular time.
I mean, even with those prices, like you say, a nickel an egg, not like a nickel a dozen. So
Mhm.
that adds up when you're making, $15 a month, and you have a family to feed.
Absolutely.
Like,
And the other thing to keep in mind too is that this is a part of Guatemala that in the 1960s, infrastructure was not very developed, right?
hmm
And so the process of getting other products in and out of this area is substantially more difficult than it would have been, if there were highways or interstates.
hmm
So, and this is something that is not uncommon.
Yeah,
But it sort of constricts and confines that local sort of food ecosystem and
Right.
marketplace to the immediate area. And that's going to also contribute to these nutrition problems as well.
that's crazy.
I mean, it makes sense. I mean, I'm curious with in San Lucas and the surrounding areas. Jess and I talk a lot about how kind of like monocrop cultures have infrastructure built to support that crop, like the coffee.
Right.
And you said like 95% of it was for export. So I imagine they had like roads and stuff built specifically for the coffee, but not necessarily to bring in things to help the rest of the town or the workers or the citizens who live there.
Absolutely. And that's something that the mission ultimately really stepped in and helped with is that the mission ultimately was able to generate enough consistent revenue for the people that they were able to reinvest into the community in a pretty substantial way.
Hmm.
So one of the drivers behind this was Father Greg had a very specific outlook on the meaning of poverty. And he took this sort of very, you could almost call it a holistic view. And it all stemmed from one very simple idea. And as he was fond of saying, poverty is what kills a culture.
Hmm.
And more than that, he saw that poverty as having many forms. So for him, he saw it as there's economic poverty, there's physical poverty, there's mental poverty, there's spiritual poverty. All these different sort of facets of this same thing contribute to this greater whole. And the idea was that the mission would launch projects that would attack that poverty from different angles, for lack of a better term.
Smart.
Yeah, yeah. And this also predates and sort of precedes what some of the ideas and philosophies of what would eventually be named as liberation theology, right?
Mm,
This
yeah.
idea of
Interesting.
breaking poverty and breaking that historic cycle of poverty and dependence as being an act of empowerment for local populations, right?
Mm,
Yeah.
And so that's really what you get in the story of this mission. And I think one of the reasons that you have me on, besides my charm and wit, is that farming was also a big part of what Father Greg saw as the solution, for a couple of reasons. One, more efficient, more productive farming has obviously physical benefits, right? The
Mhm.
nutrition, increasing life expectancy, these types of things. But it also has an economic and social component to it as well. And that's really what I think makes this a story worth telling. So for Father Greg, he saw farming as an important part to the solution for breaking this cycle of poverty. See, the story, so the archbishop was really just a stooge for the army.
Yeah.
Like he blessed the tanks.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Yeah. And they had this cat hanging around the mission, and they took it in to give it a home, and they sent it away to get neutered. And when they brought it back, they decided to name it after the arch.
That's amazing. Oh, that's
A
awesome.
priest told me that story.
Oh yeah, that's awesome.
I love that. I love that.
Father John, what a character. Okay.
Father Greg seems like from his notes,
Yeah.
he's working on one level, but then his ability to see poverty as more than not having money and not
Hmm.
having enough money is really like, I don't know if profound is the right word, but he must have been such a interesting person to like kind of look at his papers and like learn about. He must have been like
Yeah.
working on another level, you know?
Yeah, and I'm glad that you brought that up because one of the things that I had the privilege of doing is I had a chance to go through his personal papers
Yeah.
when I was in the process of writing the book, and he took meticulous notes, and he made reference to books by Gustavo Gutierrez and
Hmm.
Martin Luther, right? And quoted Bartolome de las Casas, in his writing. So he was very cognizant and very aware of that ongoing intellectual conversation around
Hmm.
poverty and society and politics. And he saw farming as sort of his contribution to that particular sort of mental chorus, right?
Hmm.
And for him, farming was a way to increase life expectancy, to increase physical wellness and attack that physical poverty. But he also saw it as a way to sort of restore dignity to people and get them out of their poverty and empower them to do it on their own terms.
Yeah, that's amazing. Like giving them the tools to do it themselves.
Right.
They're
And-
not getting like a handout in one way or another, but it's like they work themselves out of it. And that's
right.
awesome.
And in his notes, he alluded to that on multiple occasions, where he would discuss the fact that we quickly realized as missionaries that this wasn't going to work if we tried to impose external ways of doing things on a society that had done things a very specific way for hundreds of years.
Right.
And those methods and those
Right.
ways of doing things could at times have very significant cultural dimensions to them as well, right?
Hmm.
So there's also that sort of cognizance of we are outsiders in this particular environment. Our job is to advise and follow, not to lead and dictate. And
Yes.
that's actually something that when folks to this day volunteer to work at the mission, that is very front and center in the experience even still to this day.
Father Greg really seemed to understand not only poverty, but how it fit into San Lucas and kind of how to get out of that with via farming. How did he really go about, making it just an idea to actually helping the people who live there?
Yeah, so there were a couple of motivating factors to getting that farming program off the ground. First, like I said before, farming was something that was very much a common cultural currency
Hmm.
for people in the area, particularly indigenous people. About 90% of Luqueños worked in agriculture, typically in the coffee cultivation.
Right.
Coffee was the cash crop for the area.
Hmm.
And going back to the economics, just very briefly, typically farmers in the area ran short of money,
Hmm.
and they had typically two options. One was they could pre-sell their coffee crop for the year to outside purchasers. But in the process of doing so, they would probably lose anywhere from 10 to 20% of the market price by selling it in advance.
Right. Okay.
Um, Option two was to borrow money locally at untenable interest rates.
Oh
And
God. So no good
this,
option.
Yeah,
right, right.
really.
And so what this leads to is you have a population where about 60% of indigenous people in and around San Lucas don't own any workable land for farming
Hmm.
in the mid 60s. So this is where the farming and model housing programs that the mission launched come into play. So by the mid 1960s, the mission had been able to start an experimental farm. And that farm had vegetable gardens, it grew fruit and avocado trees, grew coffee beans, and also raised just wide array of animals,
Hmm.
hogs, goats, rabbits were particularly important to the farming program's success in its early days. Cattle, chickens, and the farm also included terrace farming and planting foraging grass
Hmm.
Oh,
for livestock, right?
Oh, that's
yep.
cool.
And eventually, the project grew to include 110 families.
We saw that our socioeconomic program needed to grow simultaneously with the doctrine and education program. Because of the health and housing conditions present, the road to take was obvious. Our people are basically farmers. Our area is ideal for small farming. A second obvious fact was that the land in San Lucas is terribly expensive because it is coffee land, nearly $4,000 an acre for town plots. We are practically landlocked. To the north, Lake Antillean. To the east, 2,000-foot ridge. To the south, the Finca Santa Alicia, and to the west, the Finca Paxson. The only possible way to grow was through a narrow corridor of land in the southwest. This took us to the sides of the volcano Tamilian and Attilian. Notes from Father Gregory Schaefer.
This was a working farm, and the mission also coordinated education in
Oh,
terms of
wow.
agriculture. So, what would happen is the mission coordinated with USAID,
Hmm.
also with the Maryknoll Mission and Catholic Relief Services,
Hmm.
and offered classes for San Lucas residents to learn better farming techniques, learn how to make better use of the land and make it more productive.
Fantastic.
Have you
And along with that came a housing program.
Awesome.
The model housing program is something that I find really fascinating. And what would happen is the mission and town had a committee of local people that would select a family that was in need of a home.
Hmm.
And once they were selected, it was truly a community effort. And so what would happen is the mission would put up the cost for the materials to build the home. And that cost $350 per home
Wow.
Oh, wow.
for all of the materials. The labor was donated by local residents who would volunteer 1 day of their time every week, or every month, I'm sorry, 1 day of their
Mm.
time every month. So we're talking about carpenters, masons, plumbers, right? The building trades. And so the labor would be donated and free. And any overages in terms of time or expenses would be covered by the mission, right?
Okay.
Now, the only thing that was required was for the recipient to own the land that the house was going to be built on. Obviously, that is going to be a problem in an area with
Yeah.
such high poverty. So the mission would purchase the land on behalf of the recipient when necessary, and the recipient would enter into a very long-term zero interest loan to repay the mission the cost of the land.
Oh,
That's
wow.
that's wonderful.
So
But
again, they're doing it themselves, but
they are. But there's also conditions that the homeowner would have to abide by to be part of this program. And that included taking those agriculture classes,
Hmm.
nice.
as well as planting a garden, planting trees on the property, or raising two different types of animals in
Oh, wow.
exchange for the land. So they worked the land and turned it into a workable farm. And typically, these plots of land were about 3 acres in size.
Hmm.
So sizable, pretty good size. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and in many cases that land came from old fincas that the mission had purchased from local landowners and then broke up the fincas into those small
Just
three
little
acre plots
parcels. Nice.
and resold them to locals.
I mean, that's
Now,
awesome.
That's like on like several layers, really awesome. Like one, they have to work the land for to make it better. And then two, they're getting the land ownership back to the locals. It's
yes,
awesome.
and there are some very clear markers of success.
But one of the things that really adds to that is the fact that it is a 0% interest loan.
Right, yeah. And it's something that just truly opens the gates to not only land ownership, but all the things that come with that ownership as well.
Hmm.
So now what you have is a population that, in addition to having more ownership and more stake in the local land,
Hmm.
this is also a population that is now able to produce more food on a more consistent basis. So they can become healthier.
Right.
And one of the truly remarkable things about these mission projects is that 2/3 of the money generated by mission projects stayed in the community.
Gotcha.
What that looks like in practice is that extra revenue and that extra wealth for the community. The mission was able to build two new schools between 1965 and 1970. And
And that's just incredible work.
yeah,
Yeah.
and it tripled the enrollment of
Wow.
of of children, local children enrolled in school. Enrollment triples. Another way to look at it is in 1964, when Father Greg got to the mission, locally, the literacy rate was 2%.
Wow.
By 1970, the literacy rate had increased to 30%.
That's an
Wow.
insane raise
Yeah.
in 6 years.
As part of this evolutionary process, we came to see that as foreigners, we will never be able to affect real change in the attitudes of the people. It will be up to us then to provide an opportunity for this growth and change to take place. This will have to be done from many angles, but the most important of these is education. With the talent that these people possess, we would like to give them the chance they need for their minds to open. After further study of the town situation and discussion with the groups of parents as well as the director of the national school and his teachers, we decided to build and staff a school to help answer some of the tremendous needs in San Lucas. Notes from Father Gregory Schaefer.
And these are these are the benefits of farming and increasing public health that we don't necessarily think about offhand, right?
Yeah.
And there are other benefits too. For example, all of that surplus agriculture, all of
Hmm.
the extra crops, led to San Lucas going from having one market day per week in 1965 to having three market days per week in 1970, right? So
That's incredible.
tripling that just in a 5 year span, and also tripling the amount of beef that was processed on a weekly
Mm,
basis. That's a true mark of that increase because
right.
in 1965, you had on average four cows per week slaughtered for meat consumption. By
Hmm.
1970, that's up to 12.
Oh,
Wow.
wow.
So just straight up tripled it. That's
Yeah,
crazy.
So
you've
going back to
also had
like,
150 homes that received plumbing and potable water.
oh, that's
And
awesome.
I want to say one of the, I think, not undervalued things here, but just the dignity of owning your land or
Yeah.
house, like for the community members. I think that is can't be understated.
No, and that phrase, dignity, is something that you see Father Greg mention time and time again in his papers, that this is elevating human dignity by
Right.
safeguarding it, right? This is safeguarding and sort of shepherding human dignity for people that had historically had that dignity kept from them.
Right.
Uh, for
And
like hundreds of years,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
right, right. Going back to the
like
1500s,
1500s.
right?
It
Yeah.
was just
Right.
something,
Yeah.
it was just a part of life, right? Like there was
Yeah,
no other way until Father Greg kind of showed, was like, no, we can do better.
right. And this mission program is still going on to this day, by the way. Over time, that farming and selling that coffee, fantastic coffee, by the way, Juan Coffee, if I can get in a cheap plug. Um,
You're talking to the right people
hey,
if you're trying to sell coffee.
If you need to know a guy, this is the guy you need to know. Yeah.
I have what's called the strategic coffee reserves in my pantry.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Straight Hermuse has nothing. We have a workaround.
Mount necessity. Um, but the upshot of that coffee and of those farming projects is that over the last 40 plus years, the mission has also been able to launch and maintain projects that include things like an orphanage, a
Wow.
medical clinic that includes surgical suites, for
Wow.
example, vision care, where they have physician teams volunteer their time, a couple weeks out of the year to come down and perform very critical work.
Mm.
There's a women's center that teaches women vocational skills so that way they can break out of the cycle of poverty that women uniquely face in the
Yeah.
developing world, right? Schools, like we talked about, you know, all of these, sort of different spurs of the mission come out of that farming and are based in that idea that farming can tackle poverty in so many different ways and contribute to social security of a community in so many different ways. And I think that this is a great example of that, and
Yeah.
one that really doesn't get talked about as much as it should.
No way. It absolutely does not get talked about enough, and I'm glad that you're here to tell us about it.
And
Yeah, I
thank
mean,
you.
it's so much more than farming. It's community building, community strengthening in so many different ways.
You know what else too? That USAID and other US um, organizations were able to help with that
Hmm.
and some of that training and some of that like starter knowledge.
Yeah.
I think about that and now and I apply it to today and it's like how did we lose that? Like,
Hmm.
why isn't that similar type of thought like applied to how the US farms? I mean, I understand, but I also don't, you know?
Yeah.
I won't say that it's a direct causal relationship, but I think it's important to keep in mind that this happens smack in the middle of the era of the Alliance for Progress, and that
Yeah.
sort of underlying ethos of development is a way to forestall communism.
Yeah.
And,
Hmm.
you could see how that would be especially resonant, in the 1960s when talking about Guatemala, right?
That's true. Yeah, very true.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is we need to bring that's amazing. It's Father Greg is just like on another level. That's amazing.
I just saw that he started Cafe Juanana.
Yes,
That's
yes.
awesome.
It's actually, he took the name from his parents, John and Ann.
Oh, that's awesome. What a
Yeah.
tribute.
Yeah, and they started the coffee program was one of the first big projects that the mission started back in the 1960s,
Hmm.
taking advantage of the area's, ability to produce excellent coffee on a consistent basis, giving the coffee growers the agency to set the price as well.
Oh,
Right.
nice.
Rather than having to take out insane loans or sell it at a discount rate.
Right. This is, a prototypical, or this is that early version of fair trade.
Right. And I mean, I
That's
think this
awesome.
is a really good story, not just for all the reasons we discussed, but also the time period. Jess and I have just spent the last few months talking about, the banana wars and how U.S. intervention played out in those different Central American countries in the Caribbean. And so it's nice to see kind of the inverse here, where Father Greg comes in and is actually able to assist and put power and agency back into the hands of the locals, and to kind of show them, we've done an episode where we talked a little bit about regenerative farming. It seems like that's really what they're doing here is making the land stronger, making investing in the community, and it's just a great story.
Yeah, through the course of research for the book, I came to really appreciate and respect what Father Greg and other missionaries like him were attempting to do,
Hmm.
during this particular time period. And this is a moment before the war would turn as horrific as it would ultimately become by the late 1970s.
Yeah,
And this is a period in Guatemala's history that historians have typically really kind of overlooked.
right.
And I think that as historians, we could do a better job of looking at this particular period because there are some truly fascinating stories to tell within that era that
Hmm.
really help contextualize and help us understand better what was to come after it.
Right.
That's a great point.
I do. I definitely agree, but I can see, why other historians focus on the later years, especially just in the opening of your book. You refer to some letters written by the mission telling them about how scared they are and how they have to sleep in the mission and lock the doors or unlock the doors, just hoping that the roving bands of soldiers or whoever they were would have to leave them alone and move on. And I mean, it sounds genuinely terrifying, like a far removal from the farming and how good all the rest of that sounds.
And I think that's one of the things that really drew me to this larger story is that San Lucas, in some ways, is this really vivid, really intriguing example of ordinary life surrounded by extraordinary violence.
Hmm.
Mm, yeah.
And the farming is, I think, in some ways, in strike that. And the farms are also producing or reproducing that dignity,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
that had been kept from this particular group of people for so long.
Yeah. And just to point out, it's not like a couple of days of insane violence. It's, decades of really bad violence. Yeah.
For the war.
1960 to 1996.
Yeah, so it
96.
wasn't
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
not like a quick couple years. This was life. And I
Right.
mean, you said the average age, life expectancy was 46 years.
Yeah.
That's the majority of some people's lives down there. Hopefully, the life expectancy got better in the 90s, but
Right.
generally, that's a very long time for that's it's people's entire lives were lived in that, you know, like that's all
Yeah.
they knew.
I think it was in 1982, just to kind of contextualize how bad the violence got. If I remember correctly, I believe the life expectancy in 1982 dropped to under 40.
Wow.
I think it
Yeah,
was like
so
39 something.
I mean,
Oh,
that's
wow.
I can't even really fathom that. I'm
Yeah.
35, so like I can't.
Well, and that's the
Uh,
other thing too, right? Like essentially anybody over the age of 30 in Guatemala today was alive for some part of the war,
right.
right? I
Yeah.
Yeah.
mean, that's how recent it was. And at the
Hmm.
same time, you've got people that are in what, their 70s now that could have been alive for the entire thing.
Hmm. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Right? It's a
Yeah.
huge scope.
Just to contextualize, like during all of that violence, the mission was able to come into San Lucas Tolimán and really kind of carve out a genuinely nice place.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, it was touched by violence.
Hmm.
Most places were, right?
Right.
But it didn't receive the type of violence that a place like Santiago Huatitlan did, which is not even 30 miles down down the road, right?
Right. Yeah.
Where, Father Stan Rother was murdered in the rectory
Yeah.
in
Wow.
Yeah.
1981. He was a very close friend of Father Greg as well.
Hmm.
Mhm.
They worked very closely together because their parishes were legitimately right next door to each other.
Right. 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 Right.
Certainly, there's a lot of reasons. There's a lot of explanations for that discrepancy, but nevertheless, that discrepancy exists, right?
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
the level of violence that touches a place like Santiago Huatitlan is orders of magnitude different than what it looks like just down the road.
Right. Right. Right.
Suleiman, which really contextualizes and highlights just how intricate the violence really was. And so,
Hmm.
What we're talking about is set up before it gets to the violence. The 65 to 70. Is that accurate, Dr. Cangemi? This is going to be kind of the almost time period before it goes into Banana World.
Yeah.
yeah, this
Just,
particular time, it's more like counterinsurgency,
Hmm.
hmm.
urban based, like kidnappings, that type of stuff. The real like scorched earth stuff doesn't start until a, about midway through 78.
Yeah. That's
So he
like
got there at a great time then.
genocide time
Yeah.
period. Yeah.
Well, and two, this all sounds a lot like liberation theology,
Hmm.
under the hood,
Yeah.
but this is all happening just before liberation theology becomes a thing in by the early 70s, right?
Gotcha.
That really doesn't emerge until 68 in Medellin, at the Salem conference
Yeah.
in Medellin in 1968. So this is
Got it.
all kind of taken root, just before then, right?
Right. Right.
Also, I think it's interesting to point out that people in San Lucas didn't really use that term, liberation theology, to discuss the how and why of all of this either.
But I imagine they wouldn't, right? Because if they're thinking about this is dignity and bringing it back to them and their ownership,
Hmm.
Right.
I feel like they'd be more like if that was me, I wouldn't want to put a theology on top of that now. It's like,
Right.
no, this is just,
The right thing to do.
yeah, yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
And with your editing magic, you can drop this next thing in somewhere, right? But the other thing I think that's important to note is that all of these mission projects, the farms, the schools, the orphanage, the stonemason classes,
Sure.
the health clinics, all that stuff. By the early 1970s, every single one of those projects was led and maintained by local indigenous people, not by Father Greg,
That's
missionary.
incredible. Yeah, that is awesome.
Super important too. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Incredible.
yeah, I think that's important for us
I
to.
mean, at risk of wearing the word out, you talk about returning dignity back to the people. That is, you control this. You're not learning from anybody else. You're teaching it. You're carrying it on. Like, this is all you. And I think that's incredibly important.
Yeah, because otherwise, and I think Father Greg recognized this, that otherwise it looks like another form of imperialism,
Hmm.
Yep.
culture being imposed by someone from the outside.
I
And I
think
think
what,
that was very astute of him to recognize that in the early mid 1960s.
Super. Like all the things that
yeah,
he was able to just think about in the near term and the future is incredible. Father Greg is just a really incredible character there.
I,
It
I,
makes me it makes me think like I wish I had known about Father Greg and how he handled these projects when I was in civil affairs,
mm,
because if we approached it the same way that Father Greg did, we'd be in a better place. But
mhm.
we didn't, and we not for better or definitely for worse. So I don't know why I said that, but we didn't do it right where we gave it back. We were we were framing it in a way of like giving them dignity back and giving them ownership back. We didn't do that. It was just another form of like, do it this way, take this, here's the money for it.
Right.
And then
This is
they
how you're going to do it.
because nobody wanted it. Nobody took
Mhm.
ownership of it and continued it.
Right.
They were like, yeah, we want a school, but we built it like an American school.
Right.
And then we didn't think about like now they have to pay for the generator gas to keep it going.
Right. Right.
And
Right.
they're like,
Yeah.
no, we don't care. We're not going to do it. We'll wait for somebody else to pay for it. So
Yeah.
if we had just been smarter about it and thought about it and like known like, hey, this is a system that was put in place and worked, we just would have been in a better place. But so I'm a I didn't learn from history. I didn't do it myself. I didn't learn from history and I didn't know any better, but I'm glad that we're here to talk about it and put that story out there so people do learn. It became gradually evident that a people living in such misery needed a simultaneous thrust that would gradually help them to trust, to want to improve, and to want to become positively productive. In the kind of evolutionary process born of much thought, discussion, disagreement, and advice, we found ourselves pretty well involved in a threefold program of doctrine, education, and socioeconomic development. Notes from Father Gregory Schaefer.
Jess and I are always joking about like new bumper stickers. And I could see it. What would Father Greg do?
Yeah, what would Father Greg do? Yeah.
You know, but like I was going to say, I think just kind of just a cap on this whole episode here, this whole talk is you said earlier in his notes, he had poverty is what kills a culture. And I think that was extremely salient, just deep for him to kind of understand and then not just leave it there. A lot of people would have been like, yep, these people are poor. So we're gonna help them and like feed them ourselves and all that kind of stuff. But he tried to write the whole ship of being like, this is how you do it. This is how you can do it. This is where we're going to provide housing, schools, but then we're going to give it all back to you and you're going to lead it and you're going to control it. And I think it's really remarkable.
Yeah, one of the things that he repeatedly made reference to in his personal papers was that the mission had this sort of three-pronged approach of spiritual fulfillment, educational fulfillment, but then also development.
Hmm.
Mhm.
And it's very clear that he saw all of those things as being equally important to solving this problem of poverty. The spiritual component, recognizing, as he put it, that we all have dignity and worth, um,
Mhm.
is that component of it. The education component of it, being able to actually facilitate getting yourself out of poverty, right?
Hmm.
And the development being a way to make that sustainable. And I think that without any one of those components, this story and would end up looking substantially different. uh,
Hmm.
and what it ended up being.
Incredible. Was it
Yeah.
nice to do this story out in the context of, the Guatemalan genocide?
Yeah.
I think it's an important counterweight
Yeah.
in ways. You know, it's very easy when talking about a long-term war or a genocide.
Hmm.
It can be very easy to emphasize the horror.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
this is actually something, since we're talking about it, this is something that I really struggled with when I was writing the book, is that it becomes very easy to focus on the stories of violence
Yeah.
because there's just so much of it. And
Hmm.
it becomes in some ways a slippery slope. And that violence can become sensationalized.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so finding something to counterbalance all of that horror, I felt was important. And I was very lucky that I found this in the ways that I did. Not to say that you should go into a stranger's basement unprompted. I'll put that out there for anybody. Uh, don't do that, really. Uh,
Get your wife's permission first.
right. Also do that when you're going to Cuba for a week.
Yeah, that's a story for another time. Well, Dr. Cangemi, thank you so much for coming and just talking to us a little bit about Blessed are the Activists and this truly remarkable time in Guatemala's history and all the awesome work that Father Greg and the mission were able to do in San Lucas Tolimán. I think it really is important to kind of shine a light on the good that happens because it is so easy to focus on the bad, right? Where it's just that has the spotlight. So it was a lot of fun getting to hear from you and getting to hear about all these really cool things that they did that are still ongoing today.
Thank you very much for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Well,
Absolutely.
thanks for being here. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Huge thanks again to Dr. Cangemi for coming on and talking about the San Lucas mission in San Lucas Tolimán,
Yeah.
Guatemala. I thought it was really interesting to kind of see the kind of flip side of the coin when it comes to farming, because we talk so much about how foreign governments and corporations were coming in and utilizing the land for their own gain,
Yeah.
where in this instance, Americans came in and with the help of the Catholic Church and USAID and other entities were able to utilize the land and through farming kind of give things back to the people that were, theirs in the first place, right? Like their
Yeah.
land, their soil, all that kind of stuff. They were able to utilize it to not only just undo poverty, but increase literacy rates, giving them literal parcels of land to build homes, to farm, to all this stuff. So it was really cool to see, the flip side of that, how
Yeah.
land is utilized and not in a sense that makes you shake your head and say, well, that sucks.
Absolutely. And I think too, the importance of the relationship with land and food just goes to show really what we're talking about. And this was just a positive story on that.
Right. It was
Usually
nice.
we
Nice
do
change of
negative.
pace. Yeah. If this was a previous episode, Dr. Kangemi would have went into a basement in Minnesota and that would be it.
I know, and that would be it, yeah. And then then somehow like government cheese would be involved or something along those lines.
Yeah.
But it was good to have a positive story. Again, the importance of working the land, getting your fingers in it, like feeding yourself and your family out of it, and in a way that it makes the land better, right? The regenerative
Hmm.
farming practices that were put into place. It was just an awesome story. I'm really glad that we got to have it and to share it.
Always a little skeptic because I read a book a while ago called God's Bankers,
Hmm.
and it's like a history of finance in
Oh.
the Catholic Church. And I was like, oh, this will be super interesting. It was very depressing. So when I picked up Blessed are the Activists, I was like, I don't know what to expect going into this, but it was a very good story, very uplifting, and I thought it was really cool how like I think it was Pope Paul the Sixth. He called people Catholics to go do mission work in Central America,
Oh yeah.
and Father Greg, went above and beyond. Stayed there for
Yeah.
what, like 50 years. Was buried there.
Buried there. Yeah. Yeah.
Started the coffee company down there. Like the
Oh,
Fair
no,
Trade
it's
Coffee
awesome.
Company, like all that stuff. I thought that was it was really cool. Like he went above and beyond and did everything. And you can tell in a lot of his letters that it wasn't just like a great time. He's like, hey, we're fixing things and everything's going well. It was like people are being kidnapped, they're being disappeared, they're being killed. Like it was during eventually during a very turbulent time in Guatemala's
Mhm.
history. So
And definitely go check out both Dr. Cangemi's book and the coffee company mentioned. Hopefully, we put the link somewhere in some of
they
the
are
write-ups.
they are in the newsletter. So
Hooray!
you can find the link to Dr. Cangemi's book and the Fair Trade Coffee Company if you're interested in buying some of Father Greg's coffee from Guatemala
Yeah,
that they started, which another thing I wanted to say, like in this particular instance, like Guatemala is, known for their coffee. That's their crop. They're, I don't want to say monoculture, but that's typically what it was. So you can't eat coffee beans, right? Or coffee cherries. Like
yeah.
it's not really a sustainable thing. So they had to farm the land and grow all these other things. It wasn't like, well, we've got all these bananas, so we're set, It's like
Right,
we have to
right.
figure out what we're gonna do and all these other things. But I just think it was really interesting to see how you had foreign influence come in and do the opposite of what we talked about for the past 7 episodes or whatever. Like they
Absolutely,
didn't
yeah.
do it for money, they didn't do it for wealth or empire or political
Notoriety.
strategy here. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
just we need to help these people, and they did. And they gave the people the autonomy, these indigenous people, the autonomy to pull themselves up and help themselves. It wasn't like, we're coming in here to do this so that we benefit. It's,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
this is how you guys can live
Take this and
and
run with
be,
it. Yeah.
yeah.
Hmm.
So thank goodness for Father Greg's note keeping.
Yeah.
That was
Super thorough. Yeah.
so thorough, so helpful in the newsletter as well. I mean, we've got some edited into this episode, some readings from his notes, but check out our newsletter for more. You can see the actual notes that he took that Dr. Cangemi took photos of in Minnesota, and I think that was it's super interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
So I don't know where you want. How do you want to end? Because we got one more. We're gonna do one more episode where we just kind of recap, like a short. It doesn't have to be crazy long, but like just I figured we'd have one more episode where we recap
Yeah.
everything we've talked about.
Yeah. So then we'll just say
Um,
that. So yeah, tune in next time for our recap of our Banana Wars episodes. We've learned a lot.
yeah, a lot of cool history,
Yeah.
disturbing history, but interesting nonetheless.
Yeah. Things we need to know.
And I think you mentioned it a few times when we talk about like hemispheric order, the parallels that we see. We'll try
Hmm.
and dive into that a little bit more because I think that's very timely.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, tune in for that one and then we'll wrap this up and who knows what we'll move on to.
Yeah, who knows? Maybe that'll be the end. Probably not.
Probably not.
I'm sure there's more we can dig into, but if you have any thoughts on what you'd like to hear us talk about, feel free
Otherwise,
to
we're
reach
going to
out.
fertilizer.
Yeah, otherwise this will be a farms and fertilizer podcast. You can always reach out to us at farmsandfrontlines@gmail.com. Follow the newsletter at farmsandfrontlines.substack.com. Thank you so much for listening. Really hope you enjoyed this series so far and tune in for the next one.
We'll talk to you later.
Bye bye.